It's somewhere in there, so we're going to see.
All right, let's go.
All right, so the first subject that we're going to talk about, submission. Oh my goodness. I mean, I just did, as you know, I just did a men's panel. And on the men's panel, we talked about the strong woman, or the strong black woman, the strong woman. And they say that we're going to struggle to find a man because we are not needy. We already got a ready-made house, a ready-made family. We don't need them. And so they basically told us that we're going to struggle. I know you don't agree with it.
No, I'm not necessarily that I don't agree with it, but why don't you be more honest? They said, particularly you, because every last one said on their list, you would not be that.
Well, you fit in the same category as
I
me.
mean, I did just get kicked to the curb by a guy, too.
Right. So
someone who should have been comfortable with me, but.
hey, so this submission, so coming off of that and now having to discuss submission, maybe I should have did the submission conversation before then, because now that we're having to talk about submission, only thing that's resonating in my mind is these guys say I'm not needy, and I'm thinking that they associate neediness and submission all in the same category. So if I'm not needy, I'm definitely not going to be submissive. But I know am I supposed to be? I mean, what did the Bible say about submission?
Carol, why don't we start where we both comfortable?
Okay.
I took the time today to pick up my Black Law book, it was volume 5, edition 5. I have no idea what edition it is now. But the whole premise of this conversation is skewed. It's on the wrong foundation. So let's just go back to basics, okay?
Okay.
Submit is not a bad word. We submit all the time. When you're driving from here to Atlanta, if you don't submit to the speed limit, you and the Georgia Highway Patrol or the Florida Highway Patrol are going to have a meeting.
I agree.
Okay? We're lawyers. You come into the courtroom, if you don't submit to the rules, civil procedure, criminal procedure,
Yeah.
appellate rules. Okay, so our whole concept of submit has somehow done a change when we take it out of the word submit and bring it over to the family. But here's the reality of it. We submit on our jobs. We submit to the physical world. All these billionaires spending money to go out of space, well, they submit to the laws of gravity. Okay?
But that's not what we're talking about, though.
No, but the point I'm saying is, if we start from the wrong place, we're going to garbage in, garbage out.
But, okay, so I can submit to the highway patrol people. I can submit to the judge and the rules and all that stuff.
And you
But
expect your children to submit to you.
Of course, but we're talking about wives submitting to their husbands. And I don't necessarily have a problem. I'm not saying I have a problem with it. It's just that I don't think that I clearly understand what that means. I mean, what am I supposed to do? I mean,
Well, let's go back to a basic definition. Somebody's supposed to be the head, and somebody's supposed to be the follower. Does the head totally ignore the follower's concerns? And do the followers completely ignore the leader's concern? And in the family, under the biblical model, the man is supposed to be the head of the house. That's the way God created it. I mean, we've had this conversation many times, and I've used that word hardwired, and I mean hardwired. When we go back, and I'm not even going to argue about it, my whole premise comes from a biblical point of view. In fact, just in case, I thought I'd better just bring my Bible.
Uh-oh.
I just got it here, real handy.
Uh-oh.
Just in case you need it. That's not an that's where I'm coming from. But we were.
you're going to have to cut me some slack on the Bible now.
No. I'm just saying that's where I'm coming from. That is where I derive all of my principles. And so let's just start in the Garden of Eden. God created man first, and then woman was created out of his rib. She was to be his helpmate. She was beside him. He was not to lord over her, but she was not lording over him. And you realize that while Eve ate of the fruit, the forbidden fruit, it was Adam's eating of the forbidden fruit. You know, I have to use the two fingers. They used to fuss at me about that.
Yeah.
But it was Adam's eating of the forbidden fruit that resulted in their being evicted from the Garden of Eden. So
Because what? Because he wasn't leader? He followed her?
he did. So I guess on the men's panel, I would say to them, well, men, y'all need to pay attention to where y'all going, because us women are leading. You shouldn't let us lead. If you let us lead, you may end up where you don't want to go. Just take that.
Well, I mean, okay, so what does the Bible say? Tell me what the Bible says, and then let's just try to break it down, because clearly clearly, 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 you look at the divorce rate or the relationship breakup rate, whichever one you want to talk about, there ain't a lot of submissive women. And when you look at, successful women, women are more successful. Most of us are the breadwinners or the head of our, financially, we're the breadwinners, and financially, we're the head of the household. So what are we supposed to do?
Neighbor,
What?
what really do you think when you look at a male and a female, a husband and wife relationship? What do you think in the most purest definition that role should look like? What's his role and what is her role?
What you want? Okay, so this is what I think, and this will address the submission issue.
Okay.
Everybody.
I'm leaning forward because I'm really engaged. Let me just lean on back.
Okay, so you got a man. The man has certain skills, certain knowledges, and he brings certain things to the table, and the woman brings certain things to the table.
Function?
The provider, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
But if she's the primary provider.
I said go to the ideal. Let's paint the ideal, and then
But-
let's go to the black letter law, and then we can do the exceptions if there are any to the rule.
Well, no, you're going back to the biblical times. Okay, so yeah, he was a provider.
But Nebra,
What?
we were hardwired at creation. So if I'm going to have this discussion, I'm going to stick with this is how God
It's
ordained and
yeah.
intended for it to be. We're so far from the God's ordained, God's plan.
And I like that. I like that, and I'm with you 100%. And Lord, please forgive me if I say anything in this panel discussion that caused you to think I'm not with you, I'm down. But we're not living in those times anymore.
But why not?
We're not.
But why not?
Because we're getting up every morning, we're going to work,
But Neighbor,
and then
why
we got a
not?
lot of single households
But Nebra, why not?
because we're just not.
But Nebra, why not?
Why not? It's the reality of the situation,
And how do
Judy.
we get to this reality, Nebra?
Okay, I know sin, the devil, and all of that
Yeah,
stuff.
but in practical language.
I don't know, tell me.
We were serious divorce, well, you still are a serious divorce attorney.
Yes.
Of course, you learned from the best, but be that as it may be.
Now the student has become the teacher. So now you're learning from the best.
I am learning from the best. But Nebra,
Yes.
when God started this, it was a man and a woman engaged in an intimate, the most intimate relationship there was, marriage.
Yes.
It came from the week of creation, all right?
Mhm.
And they were to leave and cleave and become one. Now, somewhere, somehow, that model, those instructions got what's the word I'm looking for? Sideways or all kinds of ways other than the straight way, okay? And so apparently the men got sloppy on fulfilling their roles, and the women got out of line of their roles.
Here we go.
So once you go down 75 headed up to Atlanta, the moment you get out of the northbound lane over into that southbound lane, because the southbound lane is serving the express purpose of bringing traffic toward Florida. The northbound serves it of going to Atlanta, okay? The problem is we get out of our lanes. We get out of our roles. We get out of our purposes. And as much as we want to talk about those words as if they're dirty words, we acknowledge it everywhere else until we get into the family situation. All of a sudden in the family situation scenario, we want to trash them.
But okay, but
So a man
I
is
get
supposed to be
it.
a provider. A man is supposed to be a provider. It was the man who went out and he tilled the soil and he hunted the animals, okay? It was the man who was the leader of the phone.
Now stop right there. Now, do you acknowledge in current times that there are men who are homemakers? They're the ones at home. And that there are men out there who, they may work, but they don't make enough money to provide for the household.
When did money become the determination of a family being able to cooperate, a man or a woman being able to cooperate and run a successful family?
Well, I don't think that money is the only factor, but it is one. I mean, the person, and I'm not going to put education with finances, but typically if the woman is the one that's out there, she's the career-oriented person, she's out there bringing in the majority of the money to take care of the household, there's a certain degree of understanding that this is her role in the house. For
Who
what
said
it,
so?
well, I say so.
When I was over in South Africa, one of the things that I went years ago, but anyway, some judicial tour that I went on,
Mhm.
and the woman said to me point blank, during the day she is the attorney, but when she crosses that door, that threshold of that door,
Mhm.
she becomes the wife.
Yeah.
And what she did until she got home and crossed that threshold, that's great and wonderful. But when she crosses the threshold, she becomes wife.
Okay, so what's the provider? Help me understand. Maybe I need to go back. And you can give me a Black Law Dictionary, you can give me a biblical provider. What does a provider do?
In the original sense of the male's role, the man was to provide for his family. First, the necessities. But he's also supposed to provide the emotional support and binding, okay, that makes his wife's heart just grow into his. And she is the nurturer of the family. That's why women can multitask, because we have to. We gotta change the baby, cook the dinner, iron the floor, iron the clothes, clean the house, and be ready for the guests to come in at 5 o'clock. See the face you're making?
Yeah, because we ain't doing all that.
We're not doing all of that. And this, my position, I'm sure we're going to get a lot of feedback.
Now, you know you ain't doing all that either. You ain't doing all that now.
One of the good parts about being a widow for 8 years, I get to look back. And I've thought, this is a sidebar. Pause, everybody who's listening. This is a sidebar. I've come to realize, with all due respect, my husband basically created who I am today.
Yeah.
I've gone back. I've had a chance now in these 8 years to begin to just kind of unpeel, pull back, go down some of those layers. And I remember distinctly the incident that occurred within the first month of our marriage that probably meant nothing to him. He probably didn't understand the importance of it, but it did something to my psyche, and I never, ever shifted from it. Now, that's probably a pox on me that I didn't shift on it, but it was a really simple experience.
What?
I worked at the dorm up in Michigan. It was cold. We got married in December. We went to school in January. It was miserably cold. I was RA. I came home with the key to the dorm. And I asked the good dean, well, the good husband, to go back to campus with me to take that key. And he told me no. He told me I forgot, and if I took it back on my own, I would never forget. And I clearly remember being in a state of disbelief. I mean, in my world, love would have made you, sure, I'll ride up there with you. You know, you can't do this anymore. But you took a hard-nosed position on it. And somewhere in my psyche, I said, I don't know if this guy is going to hear me. And women need to know that their man, their husband, hears them.
Yeah.
Okay? Likewise, he needs to know that she hears him.
So how does that translate to submission? I mean, if he ain't
problem.
hearing me, then I'm not submitting to him.
Now, we're not talking at all about the economic situation of it, because the economics really isn't what's driving the relationship. What's driving the relationship is the blending of the hearts, the minds, the spirit. They're on the same page. He knows that she has his back, and for her, he is Superman, all those things.
Okay, but, okay, so I get that.
Okay.
I don't want you to talk about Dr. Hawkins too much because we both be teary-eyed in a minute.
I'm
So
not gonna be
we're going to move on.
No, I've been thinking about this a minute. But here's the flip side of it. Today, I'm so glad homeboy helped me to be like that, because I don't have a man to be submissive to. And if I don't, then I need to pay the mortgage.
Well, neither one of us have a man to be submissive to right now, but if we going to get one, we need to figure this out. Okay,
Well, I'm ready to be submissive. But I'm ready to be submissive. Yes, I am. I'm ready to be submissive to a man who's going to also be submissive to me, which means the very fundamentals of that relationship are in place. Like, He loves me. I'm not going to have to worry about him tipping out and cheating on me because he is committed to me. His heart is bound to mine. And he may have to work extra hard to do that because he may have some ways that he doesn't like very much. But he's got some I don't
Okay,
like.
so let's do this.
Okay.
Tell me what the Bible says about submission.
We
And
always
let's
start.
figure out how we can break it down, so we can figure it out before we enter into another relationship, but so other women can figure out what it is that they supposed to be doing.
Okay, I can give it to you in one sentence. Read the rest of the passage. We always start with Ephesians 5 and we read about wives, submit yourselves unto your husbands. But we don't read the rest of it that says, and husbands, submit yourselves unto the Lord. You showed me a man who has made his submission to Christ his first and foremost purpose and goal and determination. By definition, he's someone I'm going to delight to submit to, because if he does anything wrong with me, it's going to sure enough mess up his relationship with Christ. So if he takes a hard nose and is not sensitive to me and my needs, I can rest assured he and Jesus going to have a conversation about that.
Okay, but Judy,
Now, but see, most folks don't function
you
on
know
that
where
level.
I'm going with that.
Okay, go ahead.
Because with
The men
that premise,
the men that you were talking to on your men panel, after we talked for an hour or more about that, I looked at you and I said, you know, you just talked to a bunch of worldly men.
yeah.
Their whole
But
premise.
worldly, that means when I walk outside, those are the guys that I'm going to meet. When I'm out there trying to find a date, those are the guys I'm going to meet.
Are those the guys that you really want to choose
Well,
from?
hey.
Somebody who's going to use your financial success to say that you don't need him, as opposed to someone who says,
Wait, Judy. You got submission and you got needy. See, I think the issue is, which was the purpose of the men's panel, is we all got to get on the same accord. We need to know what they are expecting from us when they hear the wives submit, because their definition of submission may be different from mine. So I need to communicate first and find out, okay, so what you expecting me to do? I mean, let's talk about this submission thing before we get into a relationship. But like you said, is he going to do the same thing? I mean, all of those things, he's going to love you, he's never going to cheat on you, he's not going to be disrespectful, he's going to be the provider, he's going to be the nurturer, he's going to do all those things. Now, if he doesn't, if he's not like the man that God intended him to be, why do I have to be the submissive wife like God intended me to be? Isn't it if he doesn't, I don't have to?
when did our doing what God has ordained for us to do become subject to what everybody else is doing? Our relationship is this way, and once it's this way, then it goes that way. And both spouses must make sure this connection is tight, because if this connection is tight, I like that old country song, Love Should Have Brought You Home Last Night.
Yeah.
If my relationship this way is right, then there are just things that I'm not going to do to mess up this relationship. And there'll be things that I don't want to do, but I can pray this way to get the strength and the wisdom and the patience and the understanding and the knowledge to do it. And the reality of it is, Neva, submission is a principle, just like love is a principle. And so when we're looking for men, our first criteria should be, what's his relationship this way? Because if his relation this way is not good, I can assure you, you might get a good man, but I'll take a godly man any day.
Okay, so if any man was sitting here and part of this panel, they would tell you, like what they told me the other day.
Nope. No.
What?
You got to put that within the box.
What?
The men that you were talking to are not men that I would say have this relationship going this way, because I can bring in a panel of men. Okay, we talked about this. I said, the next time you do a panel of men, we need to put some other kind of men on this panel.
Okay, so we'll do that. I will bring what you describe as the godly men, and my next panel will be godly men. And we'll compare to see if now they may say it in a different way. These guys are very colorful. Great guys, very colorful. But I'll see. It may be a different type of language used. But my issue is.
The principles are going to be different. The principles are going to be different. He's not going, a godly man is not going to describe the most intimate relationship between a man and a woman in a sense where it's just something you just do. It's not just something you do. God didn't create us for it to be just something you do. We were running a double standard here.
Okay, so if I want to concentrate though on just the concept of submission/neediness,
Okay.
and I beg to differ. I think with these godly men, when I approach the conversation with them about independent, strong women and what issues they're having in a relationship, they may say the same thing, but they may call it submission, where the guys on my panel called it needy. We don't need them, but they may say women don't submit. Strong women, independent women who head of the household, they don't submit. But it's the same thing. They want us to be needy and they want us to be submission. Godly men and worldly men. But what I was getting for, this is what I was getting to. The guys told me that part of the problem is we sit and talk to women about what men need. So I'm about to do that. So when they listen to this, yeah, I'm about to do it because I'm about to ask you. What should women be doing? What are we doing in the relationship that's submissive? It's easy to tell me to submit, but what exactly am I supposed to be doing?
What you are supposed to be doing is, in fact, I thought about this. The first thing we women need to do is to get this connection straight, period.
Okay.
We need to understand that we are God's daughters, that he created us with a purpose in mind, and that he has a function and a role for us to fulfill this way, all right? And when that connection is straight, by definition, it's going to flow out to everybody else in our space.
Okay.
And that means that we understand that there's some needs that we can expect people to fulfill for us, and then there are other needs that they cannot. Nobody can give you peace in the middle of a storm. Nobody can bring you words of wisdom that is beyond human understanding. Nobody can do that. It's nice to have someone who is there with you to help you change the tire, but sure, I like when the Holy Spirit talks to me and say, Judy, you need to check the air in your tire before I left home, okay? Mm-hmm. And I check the air in my tire and, oops, I'm going flat. It is a recognition that God is first and foremost, and everything else flows from it. So, you know, I'm not really a cook. And when I was talking to the guy who just kicked me to the curb, he said, well, we'll cook together. And I smiled and I said, now, I like that answer. I'll be happy to cook with him, and he'll be happy to cook with me. We're going to do it together. And marriage is supposed to be together. You cleave one to the other. You're not
okay, you are definitely being a lawyer to judge on this, so.
Okay.
Because I asked you, I said, Judy, what am I supposed to do? Now, when I leave here, I know I'm supposed to get my relationship right with God.
If you get that right, neighbor, everything else is going to fall in line. The problem, as I said at the beginning, is we're starting from the wrong foundations. We're using garbage to build these buildings, and the first storm that comes along, it's going to blow it down. We're building relationships with stacks of cards.
Okay, but let's say, and of course, it's not our job to get the women who's listening to this to do what we tell them to do. The purpose of this platform is for them to go in home and think about it, read their Bible, develop a relationship with God, and for them to figure it out themselves. But let me ask you some quick questions before we wrap it up.
Okay.
Let's say we're making a decision on whether or not to buy a house.
Okay.
Financially, I'm in a position I can buy, I want a bigger house, I want a nicer house. Financially, alone without me, he's not. I say, honey, let's buy a house. And he says, no, we need to stay in this house. I want a house. So what are we going to do? I'm supposed to submit and say we're going to live in the small house even though I can afford to buy a bigger house? Because
I wish we can get the word I out.
Okay, so we supposed to stay in the little house?
Because, you see, from the beginning of this conversation, as you use the word submission, it's all about I as the woman. I make the money. I make the decisions. I. And I think that's what your panel of men, which probably reflect most men, they're saying, if I have a meeting, I run a household, there's a leader in my house, it's the I, me and myself follow, okay? Mm-hmm. So what they're saying is, we are making a decision, and while you may be the major breadwinner because it works better for our family, that doesn't give you more chips when it comes time to make a decision.
But every relationship needs a tiebreaker. Why can't the tiebreaker be the one who's more skillful or knowledgeable? And take money out of the equation. Or you can even take raising the children out of the equation. But there may be some decisions that have to be made for the family that if I'm more qualified to make that decision, then he should submit to me.
Absolutely.
If he's more qualified to make that decision, but with this whole concept of generalized submission, if a man believes I'm supposed to submit, then everything he is expecting to be the tiebreaker, even if he listens to me. And I think that that's going to be a problem.
I think if the man has decided that he's supposed to be the tiebreaker, then he's got a problem. And you know where the problem is? Mm-hmm. It's not this way.
It's this way.
It's this way. Because if a man is comfortable in this relationship, he's going to look at his woman and he's not going to be intimidated that she's been gifted in these areas. He's not going to be bothered that she brings to the table these gifts. I mean, let's be real. It takes two, and they each contribute based on what they have been gifted to give. A woman has been gifted to carry babies. A man has been gifted to provide for his family. And that ego struggle that we're having is what's killing this whole submission thing.
Well,
So
like I said,
when you go look for your man, why don't you start with a different set of criteria?
I'm going, like, I guess the moral of this story is we get the relationship with God right, and we go to him and ask him what I'm supposed to be doing in this relationship.
Absolutely, because the man that you think is who you should marry because he looks good, he makes the right amount of money, yeah, you can't read the heart and you can't see the future.
Well, the debate continues. At the end of the men's panel, I said I learned a lot of valuable information, but I'm still lost. So again, here I am again, a lot of valuable information about submission, but I am still confused, but I'm gonna work on it. Thank you, ma'am, I appreciate it.
It was an interesting discussion.